Hello there, and welcome to the podcast today. Cara and I are going to be talking about reaching a breaking point in your marriage. Really
Yeah,
serious topic.
we try to keep our podcast to 20 minutes, but this one might go a little longer because it's such a heavy topic and we have a lot to say about this.
Yes.
And we want to really, really encourage you. I think that this is this is a big issue and it's
Really
painful.
place to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the first thing I guess I would say about it is just we want to encourage you to feel your pain, to mourn whatever's happening in your marriage, whatever you're feeling, like grieve that and
And know
feel
that know
your
that it's
emotion.
know that it's valid, that your feelings are valid, that they are important, and that feeling through them is like how you process them and actually get to the other side.
Mm-hmm. So what we don't want you to do is to get stuck in the feelings, right? And we have a whole module actually in our Healing Your Marriage course, which is all about how to do this, how to really feel through emotions and offer compassion and validation to yourself, to do it with God, to do it with your spouse. We talk about all that because it's all so, so important. But just know that when you're when you're at that point where you're just like, I'm throwing my hands up, like I don't know what else to do. Like I feel done, right? You feel done, but you think about, the commitment you've made, and so you want to fight for your marriage, but you're just like, I don't know what to do. Like I am done, and we've been there.
Yeah, we've been there for sure. I mean, where it's like the commitment is like the only thing you have left.
Yeah.
It's like we're down to the bedrock, like we're down to the low point where, okay, the only reason I'm still right here right now is because I'm committed to this person. And that is super hard and super painful, but that commitment is important, to explore that commitment, and that's really where you start to build it again, is by exploring that commitment to the person that you're married to, and you start to really use that as a foundation to move forward.
Yeah, but I think there's so much that happens before that. Before you even get to that.
Yeah.
So just like to share a little bit about our story, here, I specifically remember. I don't know if you feel like there's been more than one breaking
There have
point.
been several. I feel like there have been several where we were pretty much taking a break from each other.
Yeah, I mean, for me, there was like one, and I don't know. I'm, early on, that was a long time ago, but
Yeah.
like this was, not that long ago, so that it's like still fresh in my memory. And it was like late at night. I want to say like 11 midnight, 1 a.m., something like that. And we were on our bed. And first of all, I don't recommend having these kind of discussions that late in the night.
Late at night when not feeling your best. Not the best time to do it, for sure.
But that's what we were, because we were in a really painful spot, and I'm the one who I like to like get these things resolved. Like it's not going to go well for me to try to sleep when we're in this really, really painful place.
It's funny because I can kind of sleep on something and then come back to it in the morning with a fresh perspective. So it's a
Really?
I can actually do that, which isn't like, but that's an opposite thing. So then we do need to resolve it.
New information here I'm getting.
Yeah, right. I sometimes feel like I need a reset. I need to like have some time and space to reset. And when I'm tired at night, like it's like, okay, this is I don't even know. My mind isn't clear, my thinking isn't clear. And so sometimes I feel the need to reset. But the problem is we do need to resolve it because, you know, like Car's in great pain about this, so we do need to resolve it. I can't just sit on it, hit pause, and say, "Hey, we'll wake up tomorrow and we'll be just fine," because we're not. We're not going to be just fine.
Well, there's a time and a place, I think, for when you can go to sleep and talk about something the next day. But I think when
we
it's this
communicate
point,
it really well. If you communicate that really well, if you actually like
there's
are
I think
intentionally saying like, "Hey, we're both agreeing on this. We're in a place right now, but we're going to have this conversation tomorrow," that could be helpful.
Well, I think it also depends on, how intense it is, what you're talking about. I mean, this is like a breaking point in a marriage. So I don't, you want to get some clarity on like where you stand. At least I did.
Yeah.
And so, and it was just like, you're at that place. I remember feeling very hopeless, very hopeless. And, And it was just a very like devastated feeling. Um, I'm starting to run through the scenarios of like, okay, what is it going to look like for us to live separately? You know, because I'm like, there is just that when you're hopeless, you know, like that's where you're at. There's not like, okay, well, this is how we're going to fix this. Like, there's no, you know, and you may have been there where you're just throwing your hands up and you're just not even seeing how this could possibly be resolved. And that's where we were.
Yeah.
And I remember just, you know, sitting in that, and I have a lot to say in our conversations and usually I have solutions, but I did not this time. And
Yeah.
it was pretty cool because Adam really stepped up and he really kind of fought for our marriage. You know, he was like, no, we made this commitment to each other and I believe that we're gonna like get through this. And he really spoke some hope into me.
Mm.
And I was like, just holding on to this little tiny shred of, you know. When he was speaking, I was like, oh, maybe, you know, and I know you were probably feeling
I was
equally
exhausted
horrible
with everything, yeah. And yeah, I was in a lot of pain too, and not really necessarily seeing the full picture of how to get out of it, and what to do.
And that's something that we want. If you take away something today, you know, I think that you don't have to know how
Yeah.
when you know who is at work, because that was the big thing for us is neither one of us really knew how. We were like, we feel like we've tried everything. We we don't have another plan. We don't have a, you know, plan B, plan C. Like they're out. Like we've tried it. We keep trying the same things. It, you know, it was like
we were trying a lot of different things up until that point. Just a lot of different. Okay, let's do this differently. Let's do that differently, and it just wasn't going.
So you know, you don't have to have hope again. You know, to choose into like, all right, I believe God is going to bring this dead thing back to life.
Yeah.
He's going to restore something that feels so devastating. To have that hope, you don't have to know how, but because you already know who, and you know that God can do amazing, amazing things, right? And He can. And if anything, if there's any lesson in our like, you know, in our breaking point there, it's that, I mean, here's the thing is that after that, we started to see our relationship grow in tremendous ways. I was like, what in the world? Like, how did we go from there to here so quickly? And I'm not saying it was like in a day,
No.
but it was pretty quickly. And it was, these were expectations I didn't even have for our marriage. We were more connected. We were more attracted to each other than we had ever been in our entire marriage. And I never expected us to be that attracted to each other or that connected, because I was just like, Adam and I, we have struggled for so long. Yeah. And I just, and you know, we have struggled with attraction. Like I have struggled with attraction with him. And so I was just kind of, I don't know, you have this kind of picture of like, okay, well, if I can get my marriage to be at least to here, like, okay, that's doable, or like whatever. And he was kind of like my friend. And I mean, yes, we had an intimate relationship, but you know what I mean? Like, I never expected attraction like what we started having, and intimacy and connection. And so it was like, this is so clearly God. And
it is a God thing. Exactly. It's almost like He has to plow the ground and plant the seed, and then all of a sudden great things like result. Like we had to get to a breaking point and kind of break down.
Well, and I don't think that was God.
Not God, but He was using it. He was using it. He was using that breaking point, and He was using the rebuilding of our relationship through that breaking point to do amazing things in our relationship. And I do feel that because I look back and I'm like, this was all God. You know, like this was all the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit was doing things that we weren't even aware of throughout this time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you have to hope in that. If you can't hope in your spouse,
Exactly.
you can't hope in your marriage necessarily, you can hope in God. You can hope that He is doing something and He is powerful and He's moving and He has a lot of good for you in this. And you have, that's where you place your hope and your trust and your confidence is in Him. And He will, you know, He will bless you guys as you work on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing. It's so hard if there's like been trust lost, right? And you said like, yeah, if you can't hope in your spouse, because that is a really hard place when you're like, I can't even trust you anymore. how do we build on something where there's no trust, where there's, I can't hope in you, because you have.
Not doing the things you promised to do,
Mhm.
which is a struggle for us. Yeah.
Mhm. And so that's, that's exactly where God just steps in and he shows up, and it's him because it's not you, right? And it's not your spouse. So
Yeah.
it's pretty
Yeah.
amazing. It's pretty amazing. It's not an amazing place to be.
No.
It's not a fun place to be. It's super painful, but those really super painful places, we need God so desperately, and he always shows up, right? He always shows up, maybe not in the way that you expected, but he always shows up, and he draws you so close to him. And then, he works all these other amazing things out for you as well. And so, you know, we don't believe that he causes the pain that brought you to that place. I don't think that that's ever his plan. That's never the way he works. But
He uses it.
and he is so compassionate to you when you're in that place.
Yeah.
Which is why I think if we can offer some action, some action steps, some guidance for like when you're at this breaking point, what in the world do you do? I think the first thing, and it's so, so powerful, and you can do it as many times as you want, take some time apart, right? You don't have to constantly be trying to figure this out. Take some time apart, spend it alone with God. He is the one who's going to offer you healing. He's the one you can literally cry out and be so extremely vulnerable with. You can say whatever you're feeling. You can share all the things that maybe you don't even feel comfortable sharing with your spouse. You can tell them all to God. He is going to be offering you incredible love, incredible compassion. He is so gentle with you and kind and loving, and he is the only one who can offer you the healing that you so desperately need.
Yeah, you're not going to find that in your spouse, but you do find it in your father, who loves you so perfectly.
Yeah. So when you're in that time with God, I mean, it's for me, it's out in the fields. I like to be out in nature. I mean, I do sometimes in my closet as well. I'm like, I go in my closet, I shut the door.
Yes.
I don't know what it is. I think it goes back to my childhood and feeling like I can't show emotions. And so I like go someplace where I don't think anyone can hear me or, see me. And then I can just cry out to God. But, acknowledge like name the emotions. That's the first thing is like, can you name what it is that you're feeling? Really understand, like, is it disappointment? Is it hopelessness? Is it anger? Is it frustration? Is it all of those? Name them and let yourself feel them. Don't try to put it away or keep it, locked down, because that is just going to create so much unhealthiness in your body. You're going to store that in your body. It's going to wreak havoc in your heart, physically, mentally. And so
there's a temptation to judge yourself when you're doing this. There is. I've noticed that about myself too. When I'm praying this out to God, when I'm like sharing my emotions, there can be a temptation to start judging yourself or judging your emotions, and that's completely unhealthy. Like you simply, like, it's a judgment-free zone. You're with God. You're not in a judgment zone.
Yep, he never looks at you that way.
And so you can be fully, freely, and completely transparent. You think about David in the Psalms, who just cries out his heart to God.
Yes.
And sometimes it sounds really ugly, and sometimes it sounds really dark. And it is okay, because that's what God is big enough and strong enough and capable enough to handle anything that we have. And he wants us to just pour our hearts out to him and to be that safe place for us, because that's who he is.
And that's where healing starts. It starts with you and God, right? It starts with you and God and him giving you that perfect compassion, that perfect love, that perfect understanding, validation that you so desire, and that often your spouse isn't giving you, right? They're too busy being defensive. They're too busy trying to, make excuses or whatever, or maybe they just don't feel comfortable with you sharing such big emotions. But God, he's not. He is there to offer you exactly what you need, and it's so beautiful when we do that, when we give him the space to just be with him. He just wants to be with us, and definitely wants to be with you when you're going through the pain. Like his heart is with you in that. He's not looking at you thinking this is some kind of well, you deserve that, like, look what you got yourself into. No, it's like his heart is with you. He wants to offer you so much kindness. And so then I've also found that it's helpful for me to ask, like, as I, I process these emotions, right? And then I like to ask God, like, how do you see Adam? Because how I'm seeing Adam is probably not in a great way, right? It's not in a great light. My brain's been looking for all kinds of reasons why he's untrustworthy, why he's, somebody I can't feel safe with, all these things. And so I'm seeing Adam in a different way than God is seeing him. And so when I ask God, how do you see Adam? It always brings me to a different space in my heart.
Changes perspective.
Mm-hmm.
I know that it does for me too. When I'm like asking him how he sees you, I'm looking at you one way, and then God just like opens my eyes to see, oh my goodness, no, this is God's daughter. This is that He loves her so much. Like how can I have these like, who am I to like think these thoughts and these judgments over God's daughter? And to have just to open your perspective up to your spouse again, it starts to open your heart to your spouse again too, as you see how God sees them.
Yeah.
That is huge.
Yes, because he loves them too. And I think that's such a great reminder. Like, hey, you may not be very loving right now. Like, they may have hurt you, whatever, but God loves them too, just like he loves you. And they still deserve, like, they're still a person that deserves love. And just like, what you're going through, they're going through, they're a human being just like you. They're going through pain just like you. I love it.
It
I
helps
love
to
it.
open up compassion in your heart. It really helps to
Yes.
open up a compassionate space in your heart for your spouse, which is so key to then, getting in a place where you can start to rebuild things.
Yeah. Yeah. So then after I do that, I like to then like in the moment, like, I know the emotion, right? Let's say I'm like super disappointed. And then God tells me like, the other day God told me that Adam was a lonely shepherd. That really helped me a ton. But anyways,
how did that help you so much?
Because I could see that you were in need of validation and compassion where I wasn't giving you that. And that you're trying to be a leader, you're trying to, care for your family, but like you felt very lonely in, in that. So anyways, side tangent. And so let's say God says that he's a lonely shepherd. And so I'm like, okay, I'm starting to think things about Adam in a different way. And then I'm like, I still need to, instead of, Adam is not meeting my, like, let's say disappointment. I'm needing security. I'm feeling very insecure with Adam. He's maybe not doing what he says he's going to do. He's broken my trust over and over and over again. And I don't feel secure with him at all. I feel very unsafe. And so I can bring that need for safety and security to God. And so instead of going back then and seeing Adam again and then kind of getting re-triggered, like, oh, here he is again, still being unsafe for me. I'm now going to ask God how he wants to meet my need for safety and security. And then I'm going to get that need met through him so that I can come back to Adam with that need already full, with love and compassion into the disappointment that I'm feeling, and with a different perspective of who Adam is. And so it changes everything. When you are not being codependent on your spouse being okay. Because if Adam is still coming to me when I'm done talking to God, if Adam maybe didn't do that work, and he's coming to me still with anger and defensiveness.
If I'm still in a triggered state, then it's very possible for me to re-trigger her again, to like bring up some of the same insecurities, the same pain again, and then go back into the same cycle.
Yeah, because if I'm being codependent on Adam, I need him to be okay for me to be okay. Then
and vice versa.
Yeah, then we're just in this. I mean, this is like a cycle of destruction.
Yes.
Whereas when I go and ask God, how do you want to meet my need for security and safety? And then God shows me over and over in different ways, how he is a safe place for me, how he is never going to leave me, how he's so trustworthy. These are some things God's told me in the past.
Yeah.
When I've asked him to fill these needs, he's told me, I never break my word to you. You can completely depend on me. You don't have to worry that I am going to, disappoint you. I'm consistent every single day. I'm the same loving, God for you. And so I'm like feeling this like incredible safe feeling. And then I can come back to Adam with my heart full, with my needs met, with healing already starting.
Yeah.
And then I'm able to, you know, not trigger Adam again, right? Like we're able to have a more clear conversation.
Yeah, it's huge to come back together in a more full state, because if you come back empty at all, then you're going to it's going to be
Or
retriggered.
some of that pain, if you didn't let that pain out, you know, is
All
probably
of a sudden
just
it
going to
shows
come
right back up.
Yeah.
It just flashes right back into the picture.
And it's okay if you need to take another break. Maybe then I come in and Adam's like, you, and I'm like, and I'm hurt again, right? Like then I need to go have another break.
It is sometimes cyclical like that.
And
Sometimes there's a process that does take time. You got to be patient with that.
Yeah, because sometimes it can feel so tedious and exhausting, right? I mean, for us, that time it's so exhausting. You're like, this is so much work to work on this marriage, and I just want you to know that is normal. This is not. It's not because your marriage is a disaster and you should just give up and try again.
Yeah.
No, this is marriage. It does take work, but the thing is, the work, God is using it to draw you to Him. He's using it to show you love. He's using it to grow you and your spouse. It's not for nothing, and it's to bring you to more connection, and to God has so much purpose for it. And so I don't want you to get caught up in the lie of like, this is too much work, like this shouldn't be this hard. I think that's a lie the enemy will use often, like, yeah, this is not the right man for me, because if he was, this would not be, our marriage wouldn't be like this,
Yeah.
And so
And that's usually
throw
a sign.
that lie out.
That is usually a sign you're trying to get your needs met in another person instead of in God, which is normal.
Well, and we're not saying your spouse shouldn't fill any needs for you,
Right.
but you always want to come back to get your needs met first with God.
Yeah.
We have a whole module on this too in our Healing Your Marriage course, like how to get your need, because it's tricky.
The inner healing stuff is very important.
Yes, yeah, and so that's why we included this stuff in our Healing Your Marriage course, because it is so powerful. And this is not stuff that you're learning in, premarital counseling, or, you're just not learning this stuff. And it's like, this is the stuff we wish we knew.
Oh man, yeah.
Oh my goodness, the pain that we could have saved ourselves.
Yes,
but
for years and years.
It's available now. And I think that's another thing, is like, you don't have to go through this alone. You can get coaching with us. You can, reach out to therapy or whatever. You can use our Healing Your Marriage course. You can go through it over and over and over again if you want. You can learn these new things so that you know how to do things in a different way, in a more empowered way, in a healthier way, in a way where you're inviting more love into the process of your marriage. Because the enemy wants to sneak in and throw all kinds of stuff in that you may not even realize is from him, right? So you're letting your emotions out. Let's go back. You're letting your emotions out to God. You're asking Him how He sees your spouse. You're getting your needs met with Him, and then you're maybe getting help from like our Healing Your Marriage course, or from you can do one-on-one coaching with us. Any of those things, reach out to somebody who can help you in this journey.
Yeah, and there is importance for both spouses to be doing this. That is a hugely important thing, although it doesn't have to totally be that way.
Exactly.
One spouse can do this and show up differently in the marriage and inspire this in the other spouse.
And it's going to help your own healing. It's going to help your own health.
Yes.
Because even if your spouse is not on board, or they're not doing the course with you, you doing this is going to literally change your life. It's going to heal things in you never knew needed healing. It's going to help you in ways that you never knew before. So this is totally valuable to do, even if it's just you. And who knows, your spouse might do it down the road, right?
Very true.
So yeah, absolutely. And I think then the next step is really start having these conversations. Come back to, after you took that break, did the healing, you come back, you start to have these conversations, right? Where the goal is the goal is not like, all right, who was right? Or what are we, like who was wrong? Who's at fault? Who's to blame?
Yeah.
The goal is listening. The goal is just, what is their perspective? Finding out like, what are they feeling? What is their perspective? How do we reconnect?
And staying in that place of compassion. You want to, always going back to that place of compassion. Like, again, even reminding yourself, how does God see this person? How does God see? Because they might be starting to trigger you again. And that is a good time to go back to that compassionate place. And how does God see this person? And what is God saying about them?
Yeah.
And just to, then you just clearly have these conversations with each other, and the goal is to connect. The goal
It's
is to
not to get
rebuild.
your side of the story
It's to
heard,
come
right?
together.
It's not to defend yourself so that you don't feel so bad. Those things, the goal is, hey, I'm in this together. We are committed. We want to reconnect. We both love each other. I want to hear him. I want to hear what is going on. Why is, what's behind the pain? What's behind, why is he showing up this way, right? The goal is to understand your spouse better, not be understood yourself.
I know.
Of course
That's
you
hard,
you
but
should be
yeah.
understood, but like when we get in this mentality of like debate mentality, or like, who won? Who's that's just no. That's just defeating the conversation is just going to end up with an explosion.
And this is going to be a little bit of a sideline, but like, not to assume things about the other person's thought process and what's going on inside of them.
Yeah, that's
To
a whole.
assume.
That is a big. That's a big part. We definitely talk about that in our conflict and communication module in our Healing Your Marriage course
Because
too.
that just builds resentment instead of the connection again.
Yeah.
So if you think you already know what they're saying, and you know what they're thinking and feeling behind what they're saying, that actually gets into a place of almost contempt.
Yeah.
Because you're judging them and you're judging their hearts.
That's why the goal is really to try to understand. It's
Yeah.
not to try to tell them what they're thinking. It's it's asking a lot of questions. It's, being curious instead of judgmental, which these things are very, very hard to do. Especially if you haven't done that healing work before, and that, taking that time with God. So you're starting to have that conversation, and you also want to start the forgiveness process. And we believe that this is a process. This is not just all right, well, I know I'm supposed to forgive you, so I forgive you. But yet you haven't really gone into all the things that are part of that forgiveness, where it's like, there's a lot of emotion there that needs to be felt. Forgiving doesn't mean ignoring how that hurts you. It doesn't mean ignoring, their behavior or letting it go or anything like that. Forgiveness is really, it's really just letting go of you choosing to like judge them or punish them for what they've done.
Yeah.
And so you can start that forgiveness process, which God tells us to forgive because it's so good for us to forgive. And so that's why he did it. He doesn't do it because it's like, here's another rule I want you to do. I want you to forgive people.
Yeah.
Nope. And that's not it. He loves you so much. He knows this is the best thing for you, is to start that forgiveness process.
And forgiveness is not a forced march. It's not just like, okay, I need to do this now, so I'm going to just do it, and I'm just going to hit this switch, and now I've forgiven them, even though your heart is still in all this pain, because that's just going to come up again. So it is a decision. It's absolutely a decision to forgive someone, but that decision also comes with a lot of like healed feelings and allowing yourself to feel through the ways you've been hurt, and that is completely okay, and that's part of it.
Yeah, and in our, because we have a module on forgiveness, and we share our 5 steps to forgiving, that process. And I think one of the big things is like, this isn't a one and done thing. It's like you are going to probably have to forgive them and make that decision over and over and over again for the same thing, because that pain might keep resurfacing, and it's okay. That's okay. That's totally, part of the process. It's not this, don't expect it to be like, well, I forgave them, so why do I still feel this way? No, that's all part of the process.
Yeah.
It's a decision, but it's also like a journey.
Just like Jesus says, how many times shall I forgive my brother? And he says, not 7 times, but 70 times 7. Like it's just, it is going to be something that's part of your life as a Christian, is forgiving. And it's that process that you just go through over and over again.
So as you're having this conversation where you're trying to reconnect, where you're listening to understand, you're starting that forgiveness process, you also want to revisit the commitment that you've made, if you haven't already, right? You're like, maybe you remind each other verbally, like out loud, or maybe you're just doing it in your own heart, like just remembering, hey, I chose this person to be married to them for the rest of our lives. And I think sometimes we choose someone and we have no idea what we're really choosing, right? Like we're like, okay, I'm choosing him and it looks fine. We got married when we were like 22. I think I was maybe 22.
20, yeah,
Anyway,
23.
We were pretty young. And I didn't really know. I mean, and we've been dating for 3 years.
Yeah, we've been dating a while, but yeah.
You don't know.
You know a few
you're
things.
Gonna be choosing, right?
You know a few things. I knew a few things, but then it's a whole different ball game than when you're together.
Yeah. And so you want to keep choosing them. And that is what that marriage promise was. It's to choose them over and over again, no matter what comes up. I mean, we're not talking about abuse here. That is a whole nother story. That is if there's abuse, that you need to leave that relationship immediately. So I'm not talking about abuse, but I'm talking about, when there's just pain in your marriage because of miscommunication or trust or things like that.
Yeah.
You want to, you made that promise. And so just remind yourself, I made that promise. And I've had to do that for myself many times. I mean, because the thought can come in like the grass is greener. Like, well, all these other guys, like they look like they're trustworthy. They look like they're actually, being leaders of their family and they're, strong and healthy for their wives. So maybe I should just maybe Adam's not, he's not ready for marriage, whatever, like thoughts just come into your head, right?
Yeah.
And so, but I just want to remind you, the grass is not greener because what you think you're choosing in the next person, you're not going to know what all is there either, right? You think you're choosing something and then there's so much more to it. It's like the iceberg, right? It's like the tip of the iceberg, but you don't see all the big massive iceberg that's under the water.
Because we all have things.
Yes,
we are not perfect people. We all we present a certain side of ourselves, but there's also underlying things that have been going on for a long time in places that need healing and help and places God's still working on.
Yeah. And so here's the other thing to do is to remember, first of all, why did you choose him, right? Or why did you choose her? Because it's easy to forget those things, right? Mm-hmm. If I can come back to like, I know exactly why I chose him because I know that he is a man of honor and I know that he loves God and I know that he loves his family, even if he struggles showing it or he struggles with whatever, right? And those are things that matter so much to me. And then also with the whole iceberg thing, what you're seeing, right? You see the little part underneath, yes, there might be mess under there, but there also might be treasure under there.
Yeah.
So you're seeing this little thing that you're choosing, but underneath, even though it's maybe a lot of mess that you're going to have to discover along the way, but it's also a lot of treasure, a lot of amazing growth. And that's why we work through these things.
And
we work through them because
just a second here, because like Kara, I mean, as we've grown and unlocked more and more of her like softness and femininity and things like that I didn't see for many years, and all of a sudden, oh my goodness, like that was always there. That was always there. It was always this beautiful thing, and now that we're working on this with God's help and everything else, it's like, oh my goodness, there is so much more to this woman and more treasure there than I even believed at one point. As we work on these things, so I think it is beautiful, the things that and that's part of our like masculine feminine dynamic that we were working on. It's beautiful, the things that you can unlock in your spouse that you didn't even know were there.
Yeah.
As you're working on these things, and as you like rebuild on that foundation of commitment again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's a lot of things under the surface, some good, some bad, but remind yourself that you choose them. We have a sign above our bed and it says, I choose you. And it's such a good reminder to me that we do need to choose each other every day. It's that whole thing, like, water, the grass is greener where you water it, not just the grass is greener on the other side. So when you're choosing your spouse, you're watering that relationship. And that's really, that's really what the next step, the last kind of action step that we're going to give you is like, start to prioritize the marriage. That has got, like, if you're at a breaking point, this has got to be the priority.
Yeah.
We gotta intentionally pour in water this marriage.
There needs to be attention. There needs to be time devoted to it. There needs to
Invest
be
in your marriage.
yes, money too. I mean,
Yes.
all kinds of things. Like
Energy.
go all out.
Time.
Go all out
Money,
in getting this. Number one priority is your relationship and how that's going to grow in this time period.
And don't feel overwhelmed. I would say just take it one step at a time,
And
because
be patient with the process.
yeah,
Too.
sometimes you think, I know you've said this to me before, like, well, there's so much that I have to work on, right? There's so much I don't even know where to start, and it's like, okay, just focus on one thing at a time. Like maybe ask your spouse, like, what is one thing that you want me to focus on? Like, what is one thing? What's one area that I want to work on growing in myself?
Yeah,
and then,
because if you're an overwhelmed person, you're not going to be. You're going to give up on all of it. But if you do just pick one thing at a time, it's like cleaning a really bad, dirty room. It's like you look at the whole room that's a complete disaster.
Yeah.
You're like, oh my goodness, I can't possibly do that. I don't even want to start, so I'm just going to stop. But if you're looking at, okay, well, there's a little bit mess over here. I can put this away now. I can work on this, and eventually over time you've cleaned the whole room. Same thing with your relationship. Instead of just getting overwhelmed with the things you need to change or the things that you need to work on, one thing at a time.
Yeah. So we hope that we have given you some really valuable ways to process through this when you're at that breaking point, but also we hope that we just infused you with so much hope, because remember, it's not about knowing how you're going to get out of this, how you're going to ever come back from this breaking point, from this like low place. It's knowing who, right? Who is fighting for you? Who is at work? And God is with you, and he has so much hope for you. And if he can do some of the stuff he's done in our marriage,
yes, he has done miracles in our marriage.
and I know, he's just he can do anything. He can bring a dead back to life, and so
trust him for that.
Yeah. And have hope. Start to use your imagination. Sometimes we use our imagination for like, this is going to go so bad, I don't know how this is ever going to work out, right? And we imagine all these things, but let's use our imagination for hope. Like, I want you to think about, like, what is my marriage going to look like next year at this time in a hopeful, positive, life-giving way. Start to feed your mind with all these beautiful thoughts and let your imagination go wild with hope. So reach out to us at any time, guys. If you are going through a painful thing, we would love to pray with you, help you, coach you, whatever we can do for you. We would love to do that. And we hope this blessed you.
Yeah.